Not too long ago, I made a video looking at some of the massive overhaul mods that have been a work in progress for a while and that are on their way to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Those are really focusing on some of those well-established and well-known mod projects that again had quite a bit of history behind them. So in this video, although it's going to be slightly similar, it's also going to be quite distinctively different. In this, I'm going to be focusing on some of the other small and actually very large, like new game-sized large mod projects coming to Skyrim. Some of these are massive updates to existing mods that you probably just didn't hear about. Other ones are smaller mods that, although again not as large as some of the DLC-sized ones, you'll probably get to play quite a bit sooner. And then finally, of course, we have a couple really massive DLC-sized mods that have popped up a little bit more recently that are definitely going to be worth tracking over the long haul. I also will have a very interesting update on the Skyrim Multiplayer or co-op mod in this video that I think some of you guys will want to hear about. If you guys enjoy the Skyrim content, you can leave a like or subscribe. I have a couple of more Skyrim videos coming in the next few weeks, but taking a look first at what is one of the largest mods coming to Skyrim, that's going to be Dyngir? Either way, I'm going to butcher it, so we'll just go with Dyngir. So, well, yeah, that's actually the mod. That's Skyrim right there. So in effect, what the mod authors behind this one are doing, that being Hayam or Haim Projects, is creating a totally new game in the creation engine, specifically Skyrim's creation engine. So at first glance, you might be like, why? But it actually makes a lot of sense. You probably have heard of this modding team as they've created several massive mods for Skyrim already, and just really good mods in general. The team of two have already put out Carved Brink as well as Project AHO. Carved Brink in 2019, Project AHO in 2018. Both of those names might sound familiar because, well, they're both massive. These are DLC-sized experiences taking you to new and unique locations, having a ton of custom items involved with them. In 2017, they also released the Snippy Droid Follower, which I'm just personally a huge fan of. And if you played any of those previous mods, or even some of the ones I didn't mention, you'll probably know this is a very capable and well-equipped modding team. So what exactly is this new mod? Really a totally new game. It's basically going to be an adventure platformer. It's in a separate universe from Skyrim, although some of the assets probably will look familiar, but this isn't the Elder Scrolls universe, so you're not going to see any of the same characters. And the main character is going to be a monk from the Toads tribe, although we don't get much as far as backstory or lore goes outside of that. Although in the trailer it does mention a release date of 2019, and some of the other posts they've updated that to 2020 to 2021, and they actually do describe how this should be releasing on PC as well as Xbox One, so your console fans are not left out of this one. So obviously pretty different compared to a lot of the other large overhaul projects with Skyrim, but an interesting one that I definitely will be keeping my eye on. Although other people have also used Skyrim or Fallout and the creation engine to make new games in the past, I think this might be one of the first ones to actually change the genre and even further the visual perspective. So taking a step away from a massive mod, I also do want to look at some of the new mods being posted by Nordwar UA. This is a mod author that's actually been creating a variety of armors for Skyrim and Skyrim Special Edition, many of which probably look pretty familiar. The ones I'm showing you right now are already released and available for download, but it's basically taking some of the armors to appear in some of the older Elder Scrolls games and recreating them for Skyrim, naturally making them also look quite a bit higher quality than they previously were. One of his more recent projects is going to be undertaking the dragon armor. This one in particular I really love because it was such a unique looking armor with all those intricate designs on it. I just wanted to highlight this one because although it is a fairly small mod, he's been really pumping these armors out. He's had several releases over the past few months and a lot of them are pretty cool and great additions to the game, and obviously there's a couple more to look forward to on the horizon. The next thing I do want to touch on is actually a pretty massive update coming to Legacy of the Dragonborn, that with the version 5 update. Legacy of the Dragonborn is an existing DLC sized mod for Skyrim. You can download it right now, it's a great experience, many of you probably have already played it, and more or less, as the title does suggest, the basic premise of this one is actually building a legacy. There's a newly added in museum in Solitude, and you're going to go on a variety of quests to actually fill out and build out that museum, many of which are representative of your own accomplishments and adventures. And along the way, you're going to meet a lot of interesting characters, fully voiced NPCs, get a lot of interesting items, and honestly, a lot more than that. So again, it's already pretty awesome, but it's getting even better with the work in progress version 5 update. There's a lot of new stuff coming with this. The museum itself, as well as some of the surrounding buildings, are getting revamped, as well as new buildings are getting added and new NPCs placed down. It also just feels like they're kind of doing a pass over the mod overall, changing certain aspects about some quests, quality of life improvements, and even further, actually implementing some pretty cool new features to Skyrim in general that will really make progressing through this mod just feel a little bit more unique and a little bit cooler. And if you think think some of this stuff looks cool, another aspect to get excited about is this is actually planned for release in just a couple of months. It'll definitely be a good starting off point to actually start a totally new playthrough with this mod. One of the other aspects of this mod that is getting a rework is some of the voice work, including introduction of new voice actors, changing around who actually voices some of the existing NPCs you encounter. This is notable as one of the big goals of this update is actually creating better continuity going from Legacy of the Dragonborn to Odyssey of the Dragonborn. This is another work in progress mod by the same mod author. To some degree they're being worked on concurrently, although Odyssey is much farther from its initial release while Legacy is just getting an update here. So effectively what Odyssey of the Dragonborn is going to do is slightly shift away the focus on the museum and just collecting. The museum will still play a role, but Odyssey of the Dragonborn will take you to a totally new world space, that of Balfira. This is an existing location in Tamriel, and more or less this is going to take place after the end of Skyrim and the death of Alduin, almost a continuation of Skyrim's story. There have been several progress updates and trailers around this mod, and from what we've seen thus far, it looks pretty massive and pretty interesting. And even though Odyssey or Odyssey's beta doesn't currently have a concrete release date, one of the aspects that actually does get me excited or more hopeful for it is they're actually breaking it up into acts. Right now they're working on Act 1 that will still be a very complete and big experience, but they're also going to follow that up with subsequent updates and additional acts to expand that experience further. This should hopefully mean we get some of this content in our hands sooner rather than later. But tying that all back into Legacy's current update, with some of the work that's being done right now in the version 5, it should be a more seamless transition. Some of those same characters are going to pop back up for Odyssey of the Dragonborn, and I think just playing these two mods in tandem when we eventually will be able to is going to be a truly unique Skyrim modding experience. But taking a look at another mod, one that's a little bit on the smaller side but definitely not a small mod, is going to be the Leviathan Axe. That at its core is really just adding in a new axe, but there is a lot to this thing, and it's an easy mod to take a glance at and just write off, but as you see all the various features it does have, it's actually pretty awesome. So yes, at its core, the Leviathan Axe is going to be a new in-game weapon that you can use on any of your various Skyrim characters. The axe itself actually looks pretty awesome. There's going to be some custom workbenches, a dwarven workbench specifically, that you'll use to actually upgrade this. But even further, as you can see from some of these images of the different levels of the axe, there's a lot of detail in this thing. It's certainly going to look good in your hands, and you could also see that in some of the in-game screenshots and videos. Although, that's only one aspect of this mod. Still a pretty cool weapon mod in its own right, but where it actually goes to the next level is where you actually get to some of the pommels or the grips with this. You can see from these images there's going to be a wide variety of different grips you can attach to this axe, but it's actually not quite that simple. In order to actually unlock some of these various pommels, you'll first have to find the recipe of it, which isn't just going to be given to you. You're going to have to hunt these recipes down from all over Skyrim, but even further, there are new and unique ingredients being introduced into the game that you'll also have to find in order to actually eventually craft some of these new attachments. So what is the eventual payoff? Well, first and foremost, naturally, many of these pommels or grips look really cool. They have very unique styling to them, and even in-game, they're extremely high detailed and will look great in your character's hands. But even outside of that, nearly all of them actually contain unique features and will give unique benefits to the axe you're using. There's a pretty cool in-game spell you use to switch in between one pommel or another. It's also described how you have to actually use the dwarven workbench in order to craft some of these. By taking that all together, even though technically this is just a weapon mod, you can see it's going to be a pretty expansive one, and one that you could easily dump a lot of time into trying to find all the various components of it. I'm actually really excited for this one. I love mods like this that, although fairly small at first glance, actually have a lot of depth to them, because typically with projects like this, it's extremely well thought out and well featured. Mods like this tend to be very well polished and actually end up creating quite a bit of fun in game. Although, outside of that, we actually are getting an update to the Soulless Lighthouse. This is another existing mod. It's actually fairly simple. It's going to add in a new lighthouse. That is pretty cool. By default, you can use the door to go to the top of this thing. There's actually an additional mod that will add an interior right now, but the original mod author himself, that with Fading Signal, is actually creating his own interior for this. Now, Fading Signal is one of the most well-known mod authors, both in the Skyrim, but in particular in the Fallout 4 modding scene. So even though it just looks like a simple interior, this is definitely something to get excited for. He describes how with this update, there's likely also going to be a little quest now associated with the lighthouse, and I actually really like this. It's taking what originally started as a relatively simple mod and adding quite a bit more depth and fun to it, and frankly, making it feel just like a more integrated part of Skyrim. After playing Skyrim time and time again over the years, you probably start to feel like some of the cities or locations just are a little bit boring or mundane. This probably due one to the fact that you've seen it so many times, but also some of them even are just kind of boring or mundane. And even though there are retexture mods to overhaul nearly all of them, sometimes the structures themselves could use a little bit of an improvement. Well, we actually are seeing that when it comes to Dawnstar, with a new mod coming from JP Steele too. He's actually already produced several mods overhauling in-game Skyrim locations. His mod, City Entrances Overhaul Windhelm, is actually a great way to change up the Windhelm Bridge and actually repair it, making it look a lot more prosperous. I think it's just a bit more fitting with the city overall compared to what you have in vanilla Skyrim. Well, now again, he is taking the same approach with Dawnstar, although overhauling the small town overall. You can see from these before and afters, it's going to be a fairly significant visual change to this area, and I personally like it. I think the houses in his version actually look quite a bit cooler, but again, it also just has that novelty aspect. Skyrim's a pretty old game at this point. Many of us have seen this same old town time and time again, so having something a little bit new and unique and fresh, I think will be a welcome addition to the game. But then with one of the mods I'm actually most excited for out of all the ones I talk about on this list, that's actually going to be Artifact's Prophecy of Umbra. So the Artifact series of mods is actually a really cool one, being developed by FrankFamily, who has produced a ton of stuff. As of late, those mods have been getting quite a few updates and been just all around pretty popular, but a bit older are some of his Artifacts mods, which at their core are basically taking something from an older Elder Scrolls game and recreating it for Skyrim. And I don't want to downplay that, because some of these recreations are truly next level and beautiful armor pieces or weapons or whatever it might be in Skyrim. Really cool implementations of things you're probably used to seeing in some older games. I'll have links to some of those down below if you do want to check them out, but otherwise now he's working on Umbra, which probably to you sounds pretty familiar. This one because it actually did just have a Creation Club release, but of course also because it appeared in Morrowind and Oblivion. So unlike the Creation Club version, the Prophecy of Umbra is going to be quite a bit more comprehensive. Like Creation Club, it'll feature a totally new quest to get the sword, but also the sword itself, a totally new armor to Skyrim. To some of you, this armor might look pretty familiar. It is a port from The Witcher 3, but it actually contains some pretty significant edits, and just all around it fits into Skyrim pretty well. I would say many people will probably download this eventual mod release just to get this armor on their character, irrelevant of the larger quest or Umbra sword itself, but several other miscellaneous items that fit in with the allure and larger quest for Umbra, which I just think is a nice touch. These obviously are very high quality, and I think will help flesh out this world a little bit more. But focusing on the sword alone, it looks awesome. It's a special sword with a unique backstory, and I feel like the visuals of it in Skyrim actually capture that perfectly. It feels unique in your hand. And then one final mod I did want to touch on was Skyrim Together. This is of course probably better known as the Skyrim Multiplayer mod. Over the past couple of months, this has gotten a couple of pretty big updates. I haven't been talking too much about this as of late on the channel, and I might have a full standalone video going over some of the more intricate details and why I haven't been talking too much about it. But just as a brief recap, Skyrim Together actually got a couple of pretty big improvements. A few months ago now, they launched their nightly build system. More or less what this means is they're periodically releasing work-in-progress test builds that anyone could just download. If you own Skyrim Special Edition, you can host your own server and play Skyrim Multiplayer, although this is a work-in-progress beta build, so it is fairly buggy. There definitely is still some syncing issues as far as where NPCs will show up on your screen versus other people's. Containers still don't sync, and some things are just disabled as it is being built out, but if you just want to mess around in Skyrim with others, whether it be modded or vanilla, you certainly can do so. And actually, a couple of the updates as of late that will probably get you to at least try this out is actually now a public server connection feature. So let's say you don't want to go through the process of setting up your own server, you could actually just look at the public server list and find tons of servers that are already set up by other people, jump on them, whether alone or with a friend or two, and play through Skyrim very easily in multiplayer. This is actually pretty cool and a pretty massive improvement for the mod overall, and I think we'll probably get a lot more people to try out some of these nightly builds from time to time. Although again, to be clear, it's definitely still not in a state where you want to do a full playthrough in this style. And one of the other things that actually is worth pointing out is they have been making some aspects of the mod open source. It's not open source overall, but some of the components that they are seeking additional help with have been made open source, so you can help build certain aspects of this mod if you wanted to. Based on some of the more recent reports, it doesn't seem like they've been getting a ton of help in this regard, which is actually one of their original arguments for not going open source. But with that being one of the major critiques, it definitely is something to point out. Even though the mod overall isn't open source, some aspects certainly have been. And yeah, if you just want to try this or kind of keep up to date, I'll have one of the more recent guides linked down below. But if you just wanted to try and mess around in Skyrim Multiplayer with a friend or two, you could do it really easily. It took me all of 5 minutes to get up to date with the latest build and connected to a server. But otherwise, yeah, that is a look at some of the massive upcoming mods to Skyrim. A lot of the stuff is pretty cool. Some of it isn't that far away, and naturally, some of it is actually playable in a beta state right now. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming to Skyrim. I tried to balance out this video showing you some stuff that still might be kind of far out, but also things that may be releasing in just a few weeks to a month. If you enjoyed the content, you can leave a like or subscribe, but with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.